The chatter of clinking cutlery and the soft hum of jazz filled the lavish dining hall of the Azure Crown, the most expensive restaurant in the city. Behind the polished silver trays and crystal glasses, 23-year-old waitress Alana Brooks carried herself with the grace of someone who'd learned to smile through storms. That evening, a new guest sat at table 9, a man every server whispered about. Billionaire CEO Nathaniel Cross, the kind of man whose face was splashed across Forbes covers, sat there like a statue carved from marble, silent, unreadable, untouchable. His eyes, deep and distant, seemed to have seen too much of the world. When Alana approached his table, something unexpected happened. His sleeve slipped up slightly as he reached for his glass, revealing a small tattoo on his wrist, a faded compass with an L at its center. Her tray wobbled. Her breath caught. That symbol, that same tattoo was inked on her mother's wrist, the one she never spoke about, the one her mother said belonged to the man who disappeared before you were born. With trembling hands, she whispered, "Sir, my mom has a tattoo just like yours." The restaurant fell quiet. Nathaniel froze, the glass halfway to his lips. His piercing gray eyes locked onto hers. The air grew heavy with unspoken questions. His jaw tightened, his voice low and shaken. "What did you just say?" And in that instant, the billionaire who thought he'd buried his past realized the ghost standing before him was flesh and blood. Alana tried to steady her breath, her heart pounding so hard it almost drowned out the soft hum of the jazz trio playing near the bar. The clinking of wine glasses, the murmurs of laughter, and the scent of expensive perfume all faded into a blur as her eyes locked on the billionaire at table 9. She wished she could take back her words. "Sir, my mom has a tattoo just like yours," but the silence that followed had already sealed their meaning. Nathaniel Cross, the untouchable tycoon with a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless, sat utterly still. His face was drained of color, and the muscles in his jaw tightened, as if he were holding back 1,000 words. Then slowly, his eyes lifted to hers, sharp gray eyes that seemed to cut through every wall she'd built around herself. "Your mother," he murmured, his voice low and trembling. "What's her name?" Alana swallowed hard. "Lydia Brooks," she said softly, every syllable trembling as it left her lips. "She used to live in Atlanta. She raised me alone." Nathaniel's expression flickered with something, pain, disbelief, maybe both. He leaned back in his chair as if struck by an invisible force. His hand, still resting near his wrist where the tattoo showed, began to shake slightly. The restaurant manager, Mr. Doyle, caught the uneasy tension from across the room. He rushed over, his polished shoes clacking against the marble floor. "Is there a problem here, Mr. Cross?" he asked, casting a nervous glance at Alana, silently warning her not to upset the guest. Nathaniel's cold composure returned in an instant. "No problem," he replied, his voice now calm but hollow. "Just a conversation." "Of course, sir," Mr. Doyle said quickly, bowing slightly before retreating. As Nathaniel lifted his glass again, Alana noticed the tremor in his fingers. The man who commanded empires looked suddenly fragile, human. Unsure of what to do, she offered a polite nod and hurried away, retreating into the back corridor that led to the staff room. Once the door swung shut behind her, she pressed her back against the wall, clutching her apron to her chest. "What did I just do?" she thought, her breathing uneven. "Why did I say that? I just saw a tattoo. It could be a coincidence." It has to be. Her best friend Mia, another waitress who'd seen the exchange from a distance, followed her in. "Girl," Mia whispered, eyes wide with curiosity. "What in the world happened out there?" The man looked like he'd seen a ghost. Alana's lips quivered. "Maybe he did," she whispered back. Mia frowned. "What are you talking about?" Alana hesitated, then spoke the words she'd never imagined saying aloud. "My mom, she has that same tattoo. The compass with the L in the middle. She told me it belonged to my father." Mia's jaw dropped. "Wait a second. You're saying that billionaire, that Nathaniel Cross, could be your dad?" "I don't know," Alana said, shaking her head. "That's impossible, right? He's him. And me? I'm just what?" Mia challenged. "Just the girl who might have stumbled on the biggest twist of her life." Alana looked down, her heart caught between fear and longing. For years, she'd wondered about her father, the man her mother never spoke of except in sighs and silences. The tattoo had been her only clue. Now, standing in the staff corridor of a restaurant she could barely afford to eat in, she'd seen that mark on a billionaire's wrist. "I need to finish my shift," she said quickly, though her voice wavered. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Alana smiled at customers, took orders, and cleared tables, but her mind replayed the scene over and over. Every flicker of Nathaniel's expression, every pause in his voice echoed in her head like a haunting melody. When the clock struck 11, most guests had left, and the staff began tidying up. Alana went to clean table 9, expecting to find it empty. But Nathaniel was still there. He sat alone, the untouched remnants of a meal before him, staring out the window into the city lights. When she approached, he spoke without looking at her. "You said Lydia Brooks," he began quietly. "Does she still live in Atlanta?" Alana hesitated. "Yes," she answered after a long pause. "In a small house on Fairview Street." "Why?" Nathaniel finally looked up at her. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried the weight of 2 decades of regret. "Tell her Nathaniel Cross wants to see her." Her mouth went dry. "Wait, you know her." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with slow precision. The confident air of a billionaire had melted away, leaving behind a man who seemed older, heavier, almost haunted. "I once did," he said softly, his voice cracking. "And I've spent 23 years regretting how I left." The words hit her like a thunderclap. Before she could respond, he left a thick envelope on the table, a tip larger than her monthly rent, and walked away without another word. As the elevator doors closed behind him, Alana stood frozen, her hands trembling as she stared at the compass tattoo burned into her memory. For the first time in her life, she felt the fragile threads of fate pulling tight, connecting the past her mother never spoke of to the man whose silence had just shattered her world. And somewhere deep inside her chest, beneath the shock and confusion, a single thought began to take shape. What if he's telling the truth? Alana couldn't sleep that night. The image of Nathaniel's trembling hand, the weight of his voice when he'd said her mother's name, it all looped endlessly in her mind. The ceiling above her seemed to echo the heartbeat of a truth she wasn't ready to face. Was it possible? Could the man sitting at table 9 really be the same man her mother had mourned in silence all those years? She turned toward the worn photograph on her nightstand, a faded picture of her mother holding her as a baby. Lydia Brooks was smiling, but her eyes were distant, as if a piece of her heart had been left somewhere long ago. Alana ran her fingers across the frame and whispered to herself, "Mom, what else didn't you tell me?" By sunrise, her mind was made up. She needed answers. No more half-truths, no more silence. She found Lydia in the kitchen, humming softly to the radio as she made coffee. The scent of roasted beans filled the air, comforting and familiar. For a brief moment, Alana almost lost her nerve until she saw the small tattoo on her mother's wrist as she reached for the mug. The compass. The same one. "Mom," Alana began cautiously, "can I ask you something?" Lydia smiled, turning toward her daughter. "Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Alana took a deep breath. "Do you know a man named Nathaniel Cross?" The name shattered the morning calm like a gunshot. The mug slipped from Lydia's hands, crashing against the tile floor, scattering shards across their feet. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her chest rose and fell as if she were trying to catch a breath that wouldn't come. "Where did you hear that name?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "At the restaurant," Alana said softly. "He was there last night. He saw the tattoo." Lydia's eyes went wide. "You talked to him?" "I didn't mean to," Alana said quickly. "It just happened. He asked about you. He said he regretted leaving." Lydia stumbled back a step, bracing herself against the counter. Her hands were shaking. "I thought I'd never hear that name again," she murmured, her voice breaking. "Not after everything that happened." "Mom, please," Alana begged. "Tell me the truth. Who is he to you? Who is he to me?" Lydia turned away, her gaze drifting to the window as if searching for something far beyond the skyline. "I was 21 when I met Nathaniel," she began quietly. He was 24, ambitious, confident, already part of his father's company. "I met him when I worked as an assistant at a charity gala. He wasn't like the others, Alana. He treated me like I mattered. He loved to talk about dreams, about building something of our own, away from the chains of his father's empire." She paused, her lips trembling. "But his family, they didn't see me as someone worthy of him. They saw me as a threat, a scandal. When I found out I was pregnant, his father confronted me. He said if Nathaniel didn't leave me, he'd destroy him, strip him of the company, the inheritance, everything." Tears welled in Alana's eyes. "So he left." Lydia's voice broke. "No. I told him to. I thought I was saving him. He wanted to run away, start fresh, but I knew what it would cost him. his dreams, his future. So I told him to go. I told him I didn't need him. Alana's throat tightened. And did you mean it? Lydia looked at her daughter, her eyes glistening. Not for a second. The silence that followed was deafening. The air between them felt thick with decades of pain and longing. He asked to see you, Alana whispered finally. Lydia flinched. After all these years? Why now? I don't know, Alana said. He looked broken, like he's been waiting for this chance for a long time. Lydia shook her head, the corner of her mouth tightening with old bitterness. People like him don't change, Alana. They live in a world that doesn't make room for people like us. I learned that the hard way. But what if he's different now? Alana pressed gently. What if he's telling the truth? Lydia hesitated. The strength in her face began to falter, replaced by something softer, something almost like longing. She walked toward the table, her hand brushing over the old compass pendant that lay there, the one she'd kept hidden in a jewelry box for years. He gave me this, Lydia said quietly, her fingers tracing the engraved lines. He said it would help me find my way back to him if we ever got lost. I used to wear it every day, until I realized the person who needed to find his way back wasn't me. Alana's voice wavered. Mom, he wants to make things right. Lydia looked down at the compass, and for a fleeting second, the hardened pain on her face melted into vulnerability. You think people can just walk back after 2 decades and undo the hurt they caused? No, Alana said softly, but maybe they can start by trying. Lydia's eyes filled again, and she turned away, unable to meet her daughter's gaze. The morning sun poured through the window, illuminating the faint outline of the tattoo on her wrist. Maybe some ghosts, she whispered, are better left alone. But Alana didn't believe that. Not anymore. She saw something flicker in her mother's expression. Not anger, not hatred, but a quiet yearning. As Lydia gathered the broken pieces of the mug from the floor, Alana made a silent vow. She wouldn't let this story end in silence like it began. She would find Nathaniel Cross again, and this time, she wouldn't just be a waitress in his restaurant. She would be the voice of the truth her mother had buried. The following evening, the sky glowed orange and violet as the city lights began to shimmer like scattered stars. Alana's heart pounded as she stood outside the towering glass hotel, clutching the strap of her small purse. She'd promised herself she wouldn't come, that she'd let the past rest, but something inside her refused to stay silent. Maybe it was the way her mother had looked out the window that morning, fingers lingering on the compass pendant, eyes filled with memories that refused to fade. When she reached the top floor, the elevator doors slid open to reveal a rooftop lounge draped in elegance, private, quiet, breathtaking. The skyline stretched endlessly before her, the air thick with the scent of rain and city lights. Nathaniel Cross stood near the edge, hands resting on the balcony railing, a silhouette against the fading sunset. His expensive suit fit perfectly, yet his posture carried a weariness that no fortune could hide. He turned as she approached, surprise flickering across his face. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said softly, his voice carrying both relief and guilt. I came because I need answers, Alana replied, her voice steady though her hands trembled slightly. For my mom. Nathaniel nodded slowly. I deserve that. He gestured for her to sit, but she stayed standing, watching him carefully, the man who could buy half the city, yet looked as if he'd lost everything that mattered. For a moment neither spoke. The silence stretched, broken only by the wind. Then Nathaniel began, his voice low, like a confession decades overdue. When your mother told me she was pregnant, I thought love would be enough. I wanted to run away with her. We had plans, a house by the river, a small life where no one could touch us. But my father found out. He cornered me. His words came out rough, strained. He told me if I didn't leave her, he'd destroy everything, not just my future, but hers. He had influence, power. He said no hospital would hire her, no school would take her child. I thought if I left, he'd leave her alone. Alana's jaw tightened, anger burning in her chest. You think leaving was protection? She asked bitterly. You think walking away made things better for her? She worked 2 jobs to raise me. She went hungry some nights just so I could eat. She never complained, but I saw it, I felt it. Nathaniel's eyes closed, his expression pained. I know, and I hate myself for it every single day. I thought I was saving her from my father's world. Instead, I let her drown in it alone. The raw honesty in his voice disarmed her, though part of her wanted to resist feeling anything. Then why didn't you come back? She demanded, her voice shaking. You had years. Decades. He turned toward her fully, the fading sunlight catching the moisture in his eyes. Because when I finally broke free, it was too late. I built my company from nothing after my father died, but by then, she was gone. I searched for her, Alana. For years. Every lead, every address. But she'd moved, changed her number. It was as if she'd erased herself from my world. I thought she didn't want me to find her. The rooftop went silent again, heavy with the ghosts of all the lost years between them. Alana felt her throat tighten. She didn't erase herself, she whispered. She survived. That's what she did. Nathaniel's expression softened, guilt flooding his features. She always was stronger than me. Alana reached into her small purse and slowly pulled something out, a small, weathered compass pendant, the metal edges dulled by time, but still intact. She held it up, and the light caught its engraved surface. She kept this, Alana said softly. She told me you gave it to her. Said you promised she'd always find her way back to you. Nathaniel froze. His breath hitched as he took the pendant from her trembling hand. His thumb traced the engraved L at the center, his face breaking into disbelief and grief all at once. She kept it. Yes, Alana said, her voice cracking. Every day. She never stopped wearing it until she realized you weren't coming back. Then she put it away in a box, but she never threw it out. Tears slipped down Nathaniel's cheeks. He clutched the compass tightly, as though it were the last piece of his soul. I've spent every day since wishing I could change what I did, he whispered. I lost her, and I didn't even know I had a daughter out there growing up without me. Alana's lips trembled. So what now? You can't just walk back into her life like nothing happened. He looked at her, determination hardening his features. I know. I can't erase the past, but I can face it. I need to see her, even if she slams the door in my face. I have to tell her how sorry I am. And I have to tell you how proud I am of who you've become. Alana's heart clenched. No one had ever said that to her before. Not once. The sincerity in his tone shook something inside her she'd buried long ago, that aching desire to know where she came from, to belong to someone who saw her. Maybe she won't forgive you, Alana said, her eyes glistening. But she deserves to hear you say those words. Nathaniel nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. Then I'll say them, no matter how much it hurts. As the wind swirled around them, Alana turned toward the glittering city below. She felt the invisible wall between two worlds, his world of power and privilege, and her world of struggle and survival, beginning to crumble. For the first time in her life, she realized that destiny didn't always come roaring in with thunder. Sometimes it arrived quietly, in a rooftop conversation between a billionaire and the daughter he never knew existed, beneath a sky heavy with forgiveness waiting to be found. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, as though the sky itself was holding its breath. Alana sat at the kitchen table, unable to eat, her mind tangled between hope and fear. Across from her, Lydia stirred sugar into her tea, pretending not to notice her daughter's anxious fidgeting. But Lydia had never been one to ignore silence. She'd learned long ago that quiet was where the truth hid. Something's on your mind, Lydia finally said, setting the spoon down. I can hear it louder than the radio. Alana hesitated. Mom, she began gently, what if I told you that Nathaniel still cares? Lydia froze, her fingers curling around the teacup. Don't, she said softly, without looking up. He regrets everything, Alana pressed. He said he searched for you for years. He didn't know you'd moved. Lydia gave a short, bitter laugh. He had every resource in the world, Alana. A man like him doesn't just lose people. If he wanted to find me, he could have. Alana swallowed hard. He asked to see you. That made Lydia's eyes snap up, eyes that were sharp, wounded, and full of memories she tried to forget. He what? Alana nodded. He said he just wants to talk, to say what he couldn't before. Lydia's shoulders tensed. She looked away, but her voice wavered. Talk is cheap, sweetheart. Words don't undo 23 years of silence. But maybe forgiveness can, Alana whispered. The two women sat in silence, their breaths the only sound between them. Alana didn't push further, but she left Nathaniel's business card on the table when she went to her room, just in case. By evening, Lydia found herself staring at that card again. She traced the embossed letters of his name with trembling fingers. Nathaniel Cross. It had been so long since she'd said it aloud. Too long since she'd allowed herself to imagine what might have been. That night, as rain began to fall softly outside, Lydia called the number. Mr. Cross's office, answered a calm, professional voice. "This is Lydia Brooks," she said quietly. "He asked to see me." There was a pause, followed by surprise. "Yes, Ms. Brooks. He's been expecting your call. Would tomorrow at noon work?" Lydia hesitated, but her heart whispered before her mind could stop it. Yes. The next day, Alana insisted on driving her mother to the meeting. The drive was quiet, filled with unspoken emotions. When they arrived at the towering Cross Industries building, Lydia almost turned back. But Alana gently placed a hand over hers. "You've waited long enough," she said softly. "It's time." They rode the elevator up to the top floor, where floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city stretched out like a living map. Nathaniel stood near his desk, his posture rigid, but his expression softened the moment he saw them. For a long time, no one spoke. The years between them hung heavy in the air, years filled with pain, distance, and the things left unsaid. Finally, Lydia broke the silence. "You look the same," she murmured, her tone unreadable. "Just older." Nathaniel let out a shaky breath. "You look exactly how I remember. Just stronger." Lydia gave a faint, ironic smile. "Strength comes easy when you don't have a choice." Nathaniel nodded, his gaze falling to the floor. "I deserve that." Alana stood quietly off to the side, her hands clasped together. This was their moment, one she had no right to interrupt, but every right to witness. Nathaniel stepped forward slowly. "Lydia," he said, his voice trembling, "I never stopped thinking about you, about the life we could have had. I was weak, I let fear and family dictate everything. And when I finally broke free, I was too late." Lydia crossed her arms, her voice firm but laced with sorrow. "You think sorry is enough after 23 years?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "But it's all I have to start with." The words hung between them. "I searched for you," he continued. "I swear I did. When my father died, I tried to make things right. But you were gone, no trace, no address. I thought you didn't want to be found." Lydia's eyes glistened. "I didn't want your pity," she said softly. "You chose your world over me. Over us." Nathaniel took another step closer. "It wasn't about my world, it was about his. My father poisoned everything I touched. I thought if I stayed away, you'd be safe." "Safe?" Lydia whispered, her voice breaking. "I wasn't safe, Nathaniel. I was alone. You don't know how many nights I sat with a baby in my arms, wondering if you'd even remember my name." Tears filled Nathaniel's eyes. "I remembered everything," he said hoarsely. "Every smile, every word, every promise I broke." Lydia turned away, wiping her tears. "I don't know if I can forgive you." "I'm not asking you to," he said quickly. "I'm asking you to let me try, to be there, even if it's only as a shadow of what I should have been." At that, Alana stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. "He's not the same man anymore, Mom. I've seen it. He's broken in the way only someone who knows regret truly can be." Lydia looked at her daughter, then back at Nathaniel. She saw it, the vulnerability in his eyes, the sincerity that couldn't be faked. Slowly, she exhaled. "Maybe," she said softly, "we start with the truth. No more lies. No more pretending the past didn't happen." Nathaniel nodded, his voice shaking. "That's all I want." And for the first time in over 2 decades, Lydia allowed him to step closer. He didn't embrace her, not yet, but when she looked into his eyes, she saw not the billionaire, not the man who left, but the boy who once promised her the world. And just for a moment, she let herself remember what it felt like to be loved. As they stood there in silence, Alana watched the two people who had built her, one with love, the other with loss, finally face the truth that had chained them both. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the first step toward it. The sun had barely risen over Atlanta when James found himself standing in front of a small, worn house on Auburn Avenue, the address Maya had given him. It was an old home, its paint fading, but it carried the kind of warmth only years of love could build. A wind chime tinkled softly on the porch, shaped like a tiny compass. His heart clenched at the sight. Maya opened the door, her eyes red from crying, but determined. "You came," she whispered, almost in disbelief. "I had to," James said, holding out the compass. "This isn't just about me anymore." She stepped aside and let him in. The air inside smelled faintly of lavender and biscuits, the scent of home. Family photos lined the walls, Maya as a little girl on a tricycle, her mother smiling beside her, her late father in uniform. But one photo on the mantel froze James in his tracks. It was a black and white picture of a young woman with kind eyes and a familiar face, holding a newborn. On her wrist, the same compass tattoo gleamed faintly, even through the old photograph. "That's my mom," Maya said softly, walking up beside him. "Her name's Ruth. She said she got the tattoo after my father disappeared. She never told me who designed it, only that it meant, find your way back home." James's throat tightened. "Ruth," he repeated, the name like a ghost from another life. He turned the compass in his palm, remembering a night more than 30 years ago, a night filled with chaos, love, and regret. He had been young then, reckless, searching for purpose after the military. Her mother had been a nurse in New Orleans during the hurricane relief efforts. They'd met when he was volunteering with a logistics team, two souls lost in a storm, finding shelter in each other. He had loved her deeply, but his past, his fear of commitment, his addiction to success, had driven him away. "I knew a Ruth once," James said quietly. "A woman who believed in hope when I couldn't see it. She changed me." Maya's eyes searched his face, confusion clouding her expression. "Wait, are you saying you?" Before he could answer, a weak voice called from down the hall. "Maya? Who's at the door?" Maya turned toward the sound. "Mama, you should be resting." But Ruth Johnson, frail yet radiant, appeared in the doorway. Her hair was silver, her frame thinner than the woman James remembered, but those eyes, those same deep, kind eyes, still held the power to silence him. For a long moment, Ruth stared at James, the room utterly still. Then she gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. "Jamie." The world seemed to tilt. James's vision blurred as decades of buried emotions rose like a storm. "Ruth," he breathed, voice trembling. "I thought you were gone." Maya looked between them, realization dawning. "Wait, you too?" "No, this can't be." Ruth stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached out. "I never wanted you to find out like this, Maya," she whispered. "But yes, he's the man I told you about. The one who disappeared before you were born." Maya's knees weakened. "You're saying he's—" James took a step closer, voice breaking. "Maya, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about you. If I had," he swallowed hard, his eyes filling. "If I had, I never would have left." Silence hung heavy, broken only by the ticking of the old clock. Ruth looked at them both, tears spilling down her cheeks. He was young, lost. We both were. I forgave him long ago. Maya, shaking, turned away. "All my life, I wondered who my father was. Mama told me he was brave, but broken. I used to dream he'd walk through that door someday. But now that you're here," her voice cracked, "you're the man on magazine covers. The billionaire everyone admires. And I'm just a waitress you never knew existed." James stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "No, Maya. You're not just anything. You're proof that the best parts of me didn't die with my mistakes. You're the reason that compass found its way back to me." Ruth smiled faintly through tears. "The compass was always meant to bring us together again. I told you, Maya, it finds home." Maya looked down at the tattoo on her wrist, then back at the compass James held. Slowly, she reached out and placed her hand over his. For the first time in decades, the family that fate had torn apart stood united, fragile, imperfect, but finally whole. And outside, the wind chime shaped like a compass turned gently in the morning breeze, pointing north, steady and sure. The air in the little living room felt sacred, heavy with memories, forgiveness, and something close to rebirth. Maya sat beside her mother on the worn sofa, her hands trembling as she stared at the compass James had brought. The sunlight from the window struck its surface, making it glint like a piece of destiny itself. James sat across from them, hands clasped, his usually commanding posture now replaced with quiet humility. He had faced boardrooms filled with power, he negotiated with world leaders, but never had he felt this kind of fear, the fear of losing what he'd only just found. Ruth smiled faintly, her voice soft as a whisper. "I always told Maya, love has a way of finding its way home. It just took you a bit longer, Jamie." He nodded slowly, emotion thick in his throat. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Ruth. Or yours, Maya. I made choices out of fear and pride. But if there's anything left of the man you once knew, I want to make things right." Maya's eyes glistened. "You can't make up for 30 years in a day." "No," he said, shaking his head. "But I can start by not running anymore." A silence fell, tender and fragile. Ruth leaned back, exhaustion softening her features, but her gaze was peaceful. "Maya, darling, I think you two need some time. I'll rest for a bit." As Ruth went to her room, Maya and James remained seated. The ticking clock filled the space between them, a rhythm of lost years slowly being reclaimed. Finally, Maya spoke, her tone quiet but strong. When I was little, I used to imagine my father was an explorer. I'd pretend he was somewhere out there following a compass, trying to find me. Mama never said much, but she always smiled when I talk about him. Maybe she hoped this day would come. James's eyes filled with tears. If only I'd been half as brave as she was. He took a deep breath. Maya, I don't expect you to call me Dad, but I'd like to get to know you. Not as a CEO or some man in news, but as the man who wants to be part of his daughter's life, if she'll let him. Maya studied him. The billionaire veneer was gone. There was only a man, flawed, vulnerable, aching for connection. You're serious about that? He nodded. More serious than I've ever been about anything. She hesitated, her eyes softening. Then maybe we can start with breakfast. A laugh escaped him, fragile but real. Breakfast sounds perfect. They cooked together in silence at first, awkward, unsure, but then something shifted. Maya handed him a whisk, and when their hands brushed, a spark of recognition passed between them. James smiled gently. You get that focus from me. I used to burn toast just like that. Maya rolled her eyes but smiled too. So that's genetic. They ate quietly at the small table, the aroma of coffee filling the air. Ruth's laughter floated faintly from the other room, as if blessing the moment. When they finished, James reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I had this made years ago. I didn't know why I kept it. He opened it to reveal a silver necklace with a tiny compass pendant, delicate, identical to the tattoo design. I guess now I do. Maya stared at it, tears welling. You kept this. I told myself it was for luck. But maybe it was waiting for you. Her hand trembled as she took it. Thank you, she whispered. That night, as the sun dipped behind the city, Ruth rested peacefully while James and Maya sat on the porch, the sky painted in hues of gold and pink. The air carried a warmth that felt like healing. Maya looked out at the horizon. Do you ever think about how strange life is? How one night can change everything? James nodded, his gaze soft. Every day. I've spent years chasing things that didn't matter. But this feels like the only thing that ever truly did. She smiled faintly. You know, I used to hate the compass tattoo. I thought it was a reminder of something missing. But now, it's a reminder of what I've found. James's voice trembled. And what's that? Direction, she said simply. And family. He reached over, taking her hand. Then maybe it finally did its job. They sat in silence, the wind rustling through the trees, the chime above them dancing with the evening breeze. For the first time in decades, James felt at peace, not as a CEO, not as a man burdened by guilt, but as a father rediscovering his purpose. When the porch light flickered on, Ruth appeared in the doorway, smiling gently. Dinner's ready, explorers, she said softly. Maya laughed through tears, squeezing James's hand. Come on, Dad, she said. The word hit him like a sunrise. For the first time in years, James felt whole. As they went inside, the compass hanging from the porch beam turned gently once more, pointing north, toward home, toward forgiveness, toward love that had found its way back through time. And in that simple, glowing house, 3 hearts beating quiet harmony, bound forever by the same guiding star that had once seemed lost to them all.